All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's Alpha Phi Eats event hosted by College Fresh. We are joined tonight by Megan and Sam, and they are going to be teaching us a delicious meal that can be great for the holidays coming up.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Bridget. Like she said, my name's Sam. I am with College Fresh. I am the regional manager here in Indiana. We are broadcasting live from my kitchen in southern Indiana, so glad to have everybody. We're going to get started and we're going to talk about some holiday meals, some Thanksgiving meals, and talk through all of that. So what we're going to do today is a turkey breast recipe. We wanted to kind of talk about a pared down, kind of a smaller Thanksgiving. I know that as opposed to the big Thanksgiving blowouts that a lot of us are used to with 15, 20, 30 people, that a lot of us are going to be just cooking for the people in our household. And frankly, when you make a whole big turkey, that is going to be a lot of food and a lot of leftovers to deal with. So I wanted to talk through how to make a turkey breast that you can buy. I also wanted to show you a couple fun side dishes that you can do. We're going to do some sweet potato stacks, I call them. They are going to be candied with a little bit of honey in there. It's not quite as heavy as your traditional candied yams with the marshmallows on top, but they look really good and they're super easy. We're also going to do a really classic green bean almondine recipe. And that's just a fresh sauteed green bean with some slivered almonds. Again, it's a little lighter than your traditional green bean casserole. So really, I think the important thing to go over here and to talk about for Thanksgiving is this turkey breast. As far as sides go, you can really pump this meal up, get some store-bought rolls, make your pumpkin pie. You can do other sides too, but I thought rather than rehashing the classics and going over how to cook mashed potatoes, we do something fun and something different. Same thing with the green beans. We'll show you something different. If you would prefer to do the green bean casserole, more power to you. So let's get started and talk about the turkey breast. So I'm going to pull this over here so I can show you guys. So this is a turkey breast, and you get this in the store. Can you guys see that? All right. So this is a turkey breast, and the skin is on, and it is bone in. Now, I highly recommend getting it like that because you're still going to keep all that delicious turkey flavor, but you're not going to have to deal with the whole giant bird like you normally would. Those turkey breasts are also usually a little smaller than you would get in the whole turkey. Now, as to where to find these, I found these at the grocery store. They look like a little miniature bagged and frozen turkey. So they've still got them with all the other turkeys. Honestly, that whole big thing, I think was about $10 at Kroger. So not only are we talking something that is smaller and more manageable, it's also really economical because for 10 bucks, we're going to get a whole lot of roast turkey breast, and that'll easily feed for maybe up to 6 people. So preparation is similar to what you would do with a whole turkey, but we've got one thing going for us, and that is the breast is going to cook a lot more evenly than everything else. How many times have you been at Thanksgiving and the turkey breast meat is dry, it's crumbly, it's sandy? The reason for that is because the thigh, the dark meat, and the wings, they take a lot longer to cook than the turkey breast. So by the time that's done, your turkey breast is dried out and not very good. So with this, we eliminate that problem totally. We can just take that turkey out of the oven when the breast is done. So let's talk about how to prepare that breast. We are going to make a little bit of a rub for the turkey, and we're going to use some Dijon mustard kind of as the glue for that rub. Now, I know some people don't love mustard. The thing is, you're not really going to taste it. This is really just kind of acting as glue for us to get all of those good spices and good herbs there. So we're going to use some pretty classic Thanksgiving herbs and spices here. We're going to use sage, rosemary, and thyme. And the recipe that we sent out, it gave instructions for using both fresh and dried. Now, please note that those amounts are different because dried herbs are going to be a lot more potent than the fresh herbs, because when you dry them, the flavor really concentrates. So I am just chopping up some fresh sage here, which is harder to say than you would think. Fresh sage. So we'll get a couple tablespoons of that. Oh, and if you guys have not worked with fresh sage before, it smells so good. I love sage. So let's get that there. It doesn't have to be perfectly small, little slivers. We're just gonna chop it up. Chop it up and get it in there. Hey, I wanna mention too, I've got these earbuds in. That's the microphone we're using. If anybody has a question, feel free to pipe up because I've got you in my ears so I can answer any questions that you might have. So that's my sage. We're gonna get some rosemary in there. It's another one that's pretty potent. So this is fresh rosemary right here. And you can see it kind of has a stem. And if you've never worked with fresh rosemary before, it's super easy. You're just gonna hold one end like this, just pinch it. See that stem there? Then you're just gonna run your fingers down and strip it off. You see how that just came off clean like that? And I'm just gonna pick the rest off. And I'm gonna do probably half of another one. So again, I'm just pinching it here, and I'm just pulling it off, and it comes right off in your hand. So let's get that rosemary in there. Same thing, it doesn't have to be the most, beautiful, even. Ooh, that rosemary smells good too. I'm surprised that we're this far into 2020 and nobody's invented smell-o-vision yet. You'd think with the whole world going virtual that somebody would have gotten on that. It smells really good in here with that rosemary. Again, I'm just adding that to the mustard. The mustard is just kind of my glue here to stick everything together. So I've got some sage in there, I've got some rosemary in there, and I actually couldn't find any fresh thyme, so we are going to use dried thyme. And I'm just going to use, I think it was about a teaspoon of that. I'm eyeballing it. Feel free to measure it if you want to. So there is that, and let's put my thyme aside here. Next, I am going to add some garlic. Oh, we have a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Turkey breast to be moist, I guess.
The best way for turkey breast to be moist?
Yeah, tips or best ways. Moist turkey breast.
Sure. So a moist turkey breast really comes down to not overcooking it. So your turkey breast, you're going to want that to reach a temperature of 165 degrees. And I highly, highly recommend going on Amazon and before Thanksgiving or wherever you shop online. We're not getting paid by Amazon, I promise. So I highly recommend going and getting yourself a meat thermometer. So rather than having to guess when the turkey is done, you're gonna get a thermometer that'll tell you when it reaches exactly 165 degrees. Because when it reaches 165 degrees, it's done. That's the safe temperature for turkey. And that is gonna go a long way in helping you keep that moist because you're not gonna be overcooking it. And that is my best recommendation. The other recommendation that I would say is don't use a super high oven temperature. So I've got my oven on 350 degrees right now, and that's what I'm going to use for that turkey breast. A lot of people talk about brining. That's something that became popular a few years ago with everybody brining their turkeys before Thanksgiving. You can totally do that. Honestly, with a store-bought turkey, I don't think that it's going to make a ton of difference because they're honestly packed with a salt solution anyways. And if you brine one of your store-bought turkeys, you're really going to run the risk of making that super salty if you brine it on top of the salt solution that's already in there. So I'm just chopping up this garlic, guys. I do want this to be pretty fine. I'm even going to take my knife, and I've got it chopped up here like that. I'm even going to take my knife and put it flat like this and kind of smash it against the cutting board. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want this garlic to burn. So if I leave it in big chunks, it's going to run the risk of burning when it's in the oven. So we're just going to kind of smush it up a bit. If you guys do not want to mess with all this garlic, it is totally acceptable to use a teaspoon or two of garlic powder. And honestly, if you don't love garlic, you can keep it out of this rub too. I love garlic, so it's going on my turkey. Or if you have a garlic press, if that's something that you have hanging around your house, somebody gave it to you as a stocking stuffer, now is the time to whip that out. All right, give that one last good go there. Now I'm going to add that here too. Get that in there. I am going to add also a few good pinches of kosher salt. We're going to add some black pepper. It doesn't have to be freshly ground. I just like the fresh ground. I like pepper, so I'm doing a few good shakes there. We're also going to add some lemon juice to this. So what I do is I roll that lemon, and that just helps break up the juice and make it a little easier to squeeze out. So I'm going to cut that in half. And then just to make my life easier, excuse me, I do have this handy dandy little sieve basket. That way I don't have to get all the seeds out of there. So we're just going to squeeze that in there. I'm going to use one whole lemon for this. So there's one. And two. Ooh, watch out if you got hangnails. That lemon juice will burn. I'm actually going to save these juiced lemons. I'll show you why in just a second. All right, get that out of there. All right, we're just going to mix this up, and this is kind of the flavor base for our turkey. Ooh, that smells really good. Let's get that. And I apologize, guys. I do have to grab one thing from my refrigerator for the next step. So let me grab that, and I will be right back. And we will get to getting this turkey the rest of the way done and in the oven. All right, so we're ready for the next step now. Move this over a bit. We're gonna bring our turkey over. Now I've got this turkey in a big roasting pan, and my roasting pan came with this rack, and that's super helpful. You do wanna get that turkey up off the bottom of that roasting pan. However, don't go out and buy a roasting rack if you don't have one. The other thing that you can do is instead of using this roasting rack, what you can do is make your own little rack out of celery. And I do this all the time because I've only had this pan for about a year. So let me grab a 9x13 and show you what I'm talking about. Nope. There we go. So if you wanted to, and you didn't have a roasting rack, what you would simply do is take this 9x13. This is just your regular old casserole dish. You would line the bottom with celery like that, and then just stick your turkey on top of that. So that would work perfectly. You just need something to get it up and off the bottom of that pan. And the reason is you want air to circulate underneath there. You want it to be up and off of there so the bottom cooks just as evenly as the top. And this is a great trick. Just use some celery. And at the end, it'll taste good too, because cooked celery, that's very Thanksgiving. So since I do have this roasting pan, I am going to use it. And we do want some liquid down there. I think in the recipe it says 3/4 of a cup. That's going to depend on your pan, really. So I'm adding more than 3/4 of a cup because this pan is pretty big. Because when your pan is big and the liquid is spread out, that's going to be a pretty big surface area, and that liquid's going to evaporate quicker. And seriously, guys, just use store-bought chicken stock. You don't have to use anything fancy schmancy. Just go to the store, get some chicken stock. And then just because I have it, I'm just going to throw these lemons here down in the bottom of the pan. One, it's going to make my house smell good, and I like that. And it'll give some extra aroma, some extra flavor to that turkey. So now it is time to rub this turkey up. So this is why I keep gloves at home, so I can use gloves for stuff like this. We're going to put some on top of the skin, and then we're also going to get up in between the skin and the actual breast. My other tip for you guys, I anticipate that these frozen turkey breasts, the breast only, I think those are going to be more popular this year than whole turkeys. So if you want to go this route for Thanksgiving, I would go ahead and get it and stick it in your freezer. That way you are not scrambling trying to find it when you're going shopping with everybody else. So this looks a little gross, guys. I apologize. But really, you just stick that turkey up. The skin, you can peel off. We're just going to make little pockets, get in between there. And I want some under the skin because that's really going to flavor the breast. And then I want some on top too. So your hands are the best tool for this job. I use gloves just so it's not quite as, because sticking your hand up in a whole turkey. So we're just gonna get that up in there. And I'm just smearing it. There's no art to this. You're just kind of getting it on the breast and smushing it around. So that's a good amount in between the skin and the breast. I would say I used about half under the skin, and I'm going to do the other half on top. So I just got that right there. And then we're just going to give this turkey a nice rub down. It's going to get a little bath in that glaze, in that rub. And remember, we do have salt and pepper in here, so you shouldn't need to salt and pepper the outside too. All right. So we've got him all squared away. I'm going to get this into a 350-degree oven. Now, really, I don't worry about basting. I have never basted a turkey. I've done it. I've not done it. And I've never found there to be any noticeable difference between when I baste it and when I don't. So if you've got that turkey baster hanging out in your kitchen cabinet still, more power to you. I wouldn't worry about it. I haven't found any big difference. The nice thing about this breast is that depending on the size of your turkey, it's only going to take maybe an hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours. So it's not going to be the all day long production of your, baste the turkey, try to put some foil on top if it's getting too dark, try to tuck the wings under so they don't get overcooked, and, try to get the thigh up to the right temperature. This is a pretty straightforward, stick it in the oven, and it'll be done a lot quicker than a whole turkey. So we're just gonna get this guy down here. And there he goes. Excuse me. All right. So when you're thinking about a holiday meal, one thing that I always think through and try to plan out is what's in the oven, how many burners do I have, and how am I going to time everything out? So you start with whatever takes the longest, right? So whatever takes the longest is what you're going to want to put in the oven first. And then I think through, okay, I've got a turkey in the oven. I know I'm going to have maybe another rack in my oven. I could fit maybe 2 things in there, maybe 1, just depending on the size. And then I think about what I can do on the stovetop too. So I try to pick things where I could just let the oven do the work for me. So the turkey, it's going to be there in the oven. That's all done. I don't have to do anything else to it. Then I'm going to think about side dishes that I can just let the oven do the work for me. And then I'll pick one thing that's really kind of stovetop heavy that I can be finishing up as everything is finishing in the oven. And then if you time it right, everything comes out of the oven and your dish that is on the stovetop is done at the same time. So that's what we're going to try to do today. I'm going to wash my hands really quick just because I was touching that raw turkey. We're going to move on to something else. So washing your hands is important this year. It's always important too when you're working with raw poultry. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Did anybody need to slow down? Everybody doing good? All right. I can hear anybody if they chime in, but I can't see you. So feel free to break in and ask a question if you've got one. Or type it in. Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. You know what? I'm hungry too, actually. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk through is a really fun sweet potato dish. So one of the most easy things you can do as a side dish is just a roasted sweet potato. Cut it up into chunks, throw it in the oven, toss it with a little bit of oil, salt, pepper, some seasonings. But I thought for a Thanksgiving big production meal that it would be fun to show you another option for sweet potatoes. So we're going to make little sweet potato stacks. And we are going to use our muffin tin to help us make those. So as you can see here, I tried to find really skinny sweet potatoes. I wanted ones that were long and skinny, not short and fat. That way they fit in the muffin tin. So that's what I chose there. That's what I'm looking for. So the first thing we're going to do for these is melt some butter. And that's what we're going to toss our sweet potatoes in. If you are dairy free, you can absolutely swap this out for olive oil, canola oil. It doesn't matter. But for this, I'm going to use butter. Use the fat of your choosing. Anyone will be fine. I'm just going to get this melted on the stovetop here. All right. So while that's melting, I'm going to peel our sweet potatoes. Ooh, I'm starting to smell those herbs in the oven. Oh man, they smell good. Another thing you could use if you wanted to instead of chicken stock. So I just put some chicken stock down in there. If you wanted to get real fun with it, you could use some white wine. I've done that before too. Combo of both. We're just gonna get the peels off of these. You could leave the peel on if you wanted to. It wouldn't make any structural difference to this dish. Got kind of a cruddy end here. I'm just gonna cut that off. Cut that off. Get rid of our sweet potato peels. All right, so my butter is just melting. You can totally do that in the microwave too, if you want to. Absolutely fine to melt your butter in the microwave. So now we're gonna take this sweet potato and I'm gonna cut along this way and just get some rounds out of it. It doesn't have to be, you know, a chef perfect sliver of a sweet potato. You know, that's pretty thin. It does not have to be that thin. So I'm just gonna run my knife, just like I showed you guys, across this sweet potato. And we're just making little slices here. If you have a mandolin at home, you know what I'm talking about? It's kind of that slicer that stands up on its side and you just go, you can use that too. Personally, I don't use those. I've seen some pretty egregious injuries on those pieces of equipment before, so I just stick with my knife. It can be a gnarly piece of equipment if you get your hands in the wrong place. And if it's Thanksgiving and you've got some wine in the mix, that can be an especially dangerous combo. All right, sounds like my butter is melted. All right. And the amounts that I gave you on the recipe that came with this, those amounts are a little different than what I'm doing here. So the recipe that you guys have is for like a serving of 4 to 6 people. Because we're doing this for a presentation and I don't have 4 to 6 people in my house, I'm just gonna make one portion. So that's why what you see here is a little bit different than what you have listed in your recipe. So I am gonna take this butter. I just don't want to burn my table here. Here we go. We've got some melted butter. We are gonna do some honey in there. Get that honey in there. I like to add it right to that pot so it melts nicely. And that honey dissolves in the butter. And who doesn't love honey butter? Get that in there. We are going to do a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Right in there. I'm going to grab my mixing bowl here. Don't need that sweet potato. And then I do want to add, and again, this is optional. If you don't love rosemary, you don't have to do this. But rosemary loves sweet potatoes. So I'm just going to chop up a little bit more of this rosemary and get it right in that butter. Oh, this rosemary smells so good. One of my favorite things that I ever found at a store was a rosemary bush, like a potted rosemary bush, and they had trimmed it to the shape of a Christmas tree. And I loved it. I thought it smelled so good. And it was great because rather than just being a decorative plant that I inevitably would kill because I forgot about it, because that's what I do with house plants, I could just go and eat it. You just pick fresh rosemary right off and use it for everything. Another fun thing you can do, this is just an aside, if you wanted to be extra creative, save these rosemary stems. So again, it looks like that with the leaves on it, and then like that when you strip it. These make such good skewers if you want to do like a little appetizer kebab, or like a little appetizer skewer for anything. You just use that instead of like a skewer or a bamboo skewer. You just put there what you want, and then when you put it in the oven, it smells so good. Get that rosemary. Again, this is just melted butter, some honey, some rosemary, a little salt, a little pepper. I'm gonna mix that up. And then I'm just gonna toss these sweet potato slices in it. Ooh, that smells good. And again, I think this is so fun. This is such a fun side dish. So it's a little lighter than, you know, your canned yams with marshmallows on top. If you love those, by all means do them. If you wanted to do something a little fun and different this year for Thanksgiving, this would be great. I'm just gonna pour that over my sweet potato mixture. We're gonna toss it up to combine. And I just want all the slices kind of coated. So I'm just tossing that like that, just to combine it. Just to combine. Then here's the fun part. Instead of putting these like on a sheet pan, just roasting them, I'm gonna stack them up in these muffin tins. And then I'll show you what it looks like when they come out. I am gonna spray them just to give us a little extra insurance policy so they come out. And then we're just gonna stack these sweet potatoes in this muffin tin. Just like this. They shrink down a little, so if they come a little over the top, that's okay. Can you guys see that? Just like that. Yep. Just stack them up there. I just think this is so fun. I think it's so cute. I love the way they look on the plate. So, looks like, so for one sweet potato of that size, looks like I'm gonna get 4 of these stacks. And really, I would figure on 2 stacks per person, I'd say. And there might be a little extra stuff in the bottom of the bowl. That's okay. These are tossed and coated plenty. And then these just go in the oven. Again, I'm letting the oven do the work for me. We got them prepped, and they're just gonna go in the oven. All right. All right, let me grab a drink real quick, and then we're gonna come back and talk about some green beans. Before I move on to talk about the green beans, I do want to mention too, if you don't want to mess with the muffin tin and slicing up the sweet potatoes like that, the same thing will work. The recipe will work just fine if you want to either buy the little pre-cubed sweet potatoes in the produce section or cut your own, toss it in the same mixture, put it on a cookie sheet, roast them off. It'll still be delicious. It'll still taste great. I just thought this was kind of a fun way to do the presentation. All right, so this is a really classic green bean recipe, green beans almondine. And really what it is fresh green beans. We're gonna saute some onion first to get some really good flavor. We're gonna throw some garlic in there, some salt, some pepper, and some of our slivered almonds at the very end. And these slivered almonds, I did not, I'm a chef, I did not sit here before you guys joined the call and cut up these little almonds like this. I did not do that. I went to the baking section of the grocery store This is important too, because sometimes they're hard to find. These are not in the nut section. So you go to the snacks, you see all the nuts in the store. These are not there. Go to the baking section. The baking section of the store will have slivered almonds just like this. I like the ones with the skin on. Let me see if I can show you. Am I in focus? Can you guys see that? Okay, so these have the skin on them, and that is how I like them. If you want to get the ones with the skin off, that's totally fine. But that's another good trick to know for the grocery store. Because if you ever need a small amount of nuts for something, go to the baking section. They have tiny packages. This was $1.50. Actually, I think it was like $1.49. I can't remember. Way, way, way cheaper than buying a whole tub of almonds. Because if you don't need them for anything else, you're just going to have those almonds sitting around. So I try to shop smart. So what we're going to do with this recipe is we're going to get our onions going first. So I'll show you guys how I cut an onion. Chefs will talk all day about the right way to cut an onion, the wrong way to cut an onion. You can do whatever you want, whatever works easiest for you. So what I do is I stand the onion up. Here's the end. Here's the end. I'm going to chop off both ends. Just chop. I chop that off. Get rid of those. Now it sits flat. And it's much easier to work with something that has a flat surface rather than trying to roll this around while you have a sharp knife in the other hand. So I'm just going to cut this in half again. And now I have these two halves, two rounds. I'm going to peel this outer edge off. We're going to do like slivers for this recipe. And now you've got a nice flat surface to work with. So I'm just going to go from side to side. And do that. I'm going to flip that bad boy over at that point. Just run it that way. There you go. And these don't have to be super uniform. They're fine. They're going to taste like onions. If you don't love onions, you can skip this step. That's okay. They'll still taste like green beans. And I think since we're only doing one portion of green beans, I'm only going to use half that onion. The recipe that you guys were sent was for a whole onion because you're probably going to have, you know, this serving will probably serve 2 people. So if you're doing 4 to 6, you'll want to use that whole onion, but I'm only going to use half an onion. So now we are going to go over to our stove top. And here I have just a skillet. I like the deep sides on this. That's going to help with our green beans to help steam them and get them tender. And we're going to put it on just a medium heat. So 2 important cooking rules to teach you. Never put oil in a cold pan. So heat your pan up first. And never put food and ingredients in cold oil. So we're going to preheat our pan a little bit. Then we're going to add our fat and our oil. I'm going to use a little combo of butter with some olive oil. And then we're going to let that heat up before we put our onions in there. Let's see where we're at. Oh, yeah. So let's get our butter in there. That's about 3 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to do about the same amount of olive oil. This is just melting. And what we're going to do is saute our onions first. We're going to take those out of the pan. We're going to put our green beans in. We're going to use a little bit of water. That's going to help steam those green beans. We're going to put a lid on it, let it get tender. Then we're going to add some garlic that we're going to chop up towards the end. And then we'll add our onions back in and stir it together. And at the very end go the almonds. All right, So my butter is melted, my oil is hot. Here come the onions. All right, let's see if you can hear this. Oh, wasn't that hot? All right, we're sizzling. I don't know if that picks up on the mic or not. There's a lot of big to-dos about caramelizing onions. We're not really going to do a, 45-minute caramelization on these onions. We're just going to get them going down in the pan, get them soft, and get a little color on it. So I've got this pan at medium-high heat. You will need to stir these pretty frequently, but you don't have to stay right up on top of them. So I'm going to let those keep rolling while I cut some garlic. So again, I love garlic. I put garlic in just about everything. If you don't love garlic, by all means, skip it in this recipe. That's fine. Now for the turkey, we smashed up this garlic and really broke it down into kind of a paste. But for this one, all we need to do is chop it. I've done a few of these cooking classes over the last few months, and one question that has come up just about every single time is about the pre-chopped garlic that you find in the grocery store. You guys know what I'm talking about? It comes in those little squat jars. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of that, and the reason why is because they use a preservative to keep that garlic from oxidizing. So oxidizing just means, what oxidizes? You know when you cut a white potato and it turns brown when it hits the air? That's because the potato is oxidizing when it hits the air, when it hits, the molecules in the air. It causes a chemical reaction in the skin that causes it to turn brown and to degrade. So that potato starts to break down. So with that garlic that's preserved in those little jars, they have to add preservatives, they have to add something acidic to it. So there's usually citric acid in there, some kind of vinegar. And those are all things that I like to eat, but I don't always want those in my garlic. So I like the fresh garlic. Now, one cheat that you can use, that a lot of chefs use, and I use in professional kitchens all the time too, is getting pre-peeled garlic, and that's totally fine. If you want to get that pre-peeled garlic that's in the refrigerator section of the grocery store, I've got a couple bags in my fridge right now, use it all the time. So I'm just going to stir these onions up. They're soft. They are getting soft. They don't really have that color I'm looking for yet. We're just going to have them keep going. Come on, onions. I'll let you guys see. Can you see that there? They're not quite there. They're soft, but I want them to have a little color on them. I want them to start turning a little brown. So this is where, and I did this ahead of time, but when you buy fresh green beans, they've got some strings on them, like on that side and that side. So this is when I would normally just be sitting here and snapping the sides off of them. And they just snap right off. They're not bad, they're just not fun to eat because they're just like the stems from where they grew on the plant. So you just want to take them off. These all look pretty good. Good. Now this guy, I think I'm going to get rid of this guy. Can you guys see that? So look at the difference in those beans. This one is straight, it's uniform, it's pretty narrow. That one has really, really big, it's old, so it stayed on the vine too long. And that means, let's see if I can do this. That means that the little bean that's in there, in the green bean, you know how there's that little pod in there? Oh, there we go. It's really big. And I want ones that are smaller than that. So that's that big guy there. I mean, It's just a little bigger than I want it to be, and it just is going to be kind of tough. So if you get a bunch of green beans or a bag of green beans, those aren't bad green beans. So with a green bean this size, I would chop it up and cook it down, like if you're doing a home style green bean that you cook all day with some bacon or with some ham. But for this, for a fresh sauteed green bean, I'm not gonna mess with it. So I'm gonna go back and stir my onions. Ooh, they're starting to get some color. They're almost there. Now my biggest advice to people who are cooking at home is don't be afraid of high heat. Don't be afraid of it. Some things need some high heat, and I know it's scary to get your skillet cranked up that high. As long as you're paying attention, it'll all be all right. Okay, can you guys hear that? They're really sizzling now. Ooh, and it smells good. Now, I like to do that a lot. So for this, I did a combination of butter and olive oil. The reason I did that is because I really like the flavor of the butter, because who doesn't like the flavor of butter? But butter browns and it burns. So if you use a combination of butter and another neutral oil, like a vegetable oil or an olive oil, you can really get the flavor of the butter, but you can really get the good temperature too from that olive oil so your butter doesn't burn. So I'm going to go ahead and call that. Let me grab a bowl. Grab one here. All right. I'm going to turn that heat off for just a second. Okay, can you guys see that? So they're nice and soft. They're getting bits of color on there. There's a little bit of brown down there in the bottom of the pan. That's exactly what I want. Ooh, and they smell good. So I do want to put these aside. So I just grabbed a bowl. I'm just going to get those over in that bowl. And put our pan back on the stove. And I'm going to put it back on, medium heat. And now it's time for our green beans. We're going to stick our green beans in there. Now I do want to add some water to this pan. So I want it to come about halfway up the green beans, and they're really in just a single layer here. And what we're going to do is we're going to let that water cook off. And as it cooks off and boils and evaporates from the pan, it's really going to steam our green beans and help us to get them really tender, but still have some crunch to them. So let me grab some water. There it goes. Get some water there. And again, we're not drowning them here. They don't have to be totally covered. We're just talking about that much. Yep. Can you see that? They're just covered. So let's get this bad boy back on some high heat. I got that really cranked here. And we're going to let it do its thing. I'm going to hit it with some salt. You really do want to get the salt in there while you have the water in there, because that's really going to be what gets the salt and the flavor all the way in. And we'll do some pepper. Use as much pepper or as little pepper as you like. And we're going to wait for these to get nice and tender and for the water to boil off. Does anybody have any questions so far? Have I gone too fast? Anybody want to go over anything again? Yeah, we got a question from the audience.
You're cooking the potatoes and the turkey at the same temperature.
Yes. So the question from Megan, who is our wonderful producer for this event, she's behind the camera, She asked, are you cooking the turkey and the potatoes at the same time? So yes, I have the turkey and the potatoes in at the same time right now. If I were making this meal to serve, for Thanksgiving, I would put the turkey in and then I'd wait probably about an hour or maybe an hour and 20 minutes before I put the potatoes in. So they're at the same temperature. They can share the oven space. For timing's sake, though, I would wait until the turkey has gone about an hour, hour 15, and then I would put the potatoes in because the potatoes are going to take probably 30 to 45 minutes in the oven to finish cooking. And if you wait until the turkey is about an hour, hour and 20 minutes in, then you can time it to where your turkey and your potatoes are done at about the same time. And the nice thing too about these potato stacks is that even if they get done right, like way before your turkey gets done, just put them aside and they'll be fine to hang out at room temperature. You can throw them back in the oven at the last minute just to heat them back up. So it's not going to hurt anything if they're done early. So remember, you can always heat stuff back up if it's done. So I'm just checking on my green beans here. We're just boiling off that water. And this is where I would use that big burner. Does everybody have that burner that they use at home? The big one that you like. This is where I would use that one. And I am not yet adding the garlic. So we're going to wait. I like to add the garlic towards the end because just like we talked about with the turkey, I want that garlic to stay fresh and I don't want it to burn. Because if you leave garlic in hot oil for too long, it's going to turn brown, it's going to fry, and then it's going to get really bitter. So we want to avoid that. And I don't think this is in the recipe, but I do want to hit these green beans with some lemon juice. So that's just going to be a little bit of acidity that helps brighten it up.
Why did you roll it?
Oh, that was a good question. The question I got was, why did you roll it? So a lemon, I want the juice that's on the inside. And when you roll it like this, that helps break down the cell structure on the inside and loosen it up. That way it's not super tight and it'll be really easy to juice it and just squeeze it. I'm not going to use a lot, just half a lemon. And fresh lemon juice has a really good trick to really add some depth to your food. And it's not even enough to taste it for the most part. It's just enough to add some depth of flavor. And two, the other thing that acidity does is it helps cut the flavor and the feeling of the fat. So anytime that I'm cooking anything that's really fatty or really rich, I always want some kind of acidity in there, whether it's lemon juice, whether it's vinegar, Worcestershire sauce is also something that has some acidity to it. So I make a really good spinach artichoke dip. I mean, who doesn't love spinach artichoke dip? It's so good. But the base is cream cheese, sour cream, and mayonnaise, and then like melted Italian cheese. So it's super thick. Sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and I'll eat the spinach artichoke dip, and it feels so heavy and it tastes so heavy in your mouth. It's just like, ugh. But what I do to mine is I add a good 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. You can't even really taste the lemon juice, but that acidity helps cut through that fat and helps lighten it up a little bit so it's not so like dense and gross feeling in your mouth. So lemon juice is a great trick if you want to kind of elevate your cooking. All right, so here's a learn from my mistakes experience. So these green beans look great. They are bright green. And that's really what you're looking for. You want them to be bright, bright green. And they're boiling away, but I still have water in the pan, which means that I added a little too much water. But it's okay. All we're gonna do, turn the heat off. I'm just gonna go to the sink and pour some of that water out. Nobody's gonna know except for you guys, and when you serve it, they won't know either. I'm just gonna pour some of it out. No big deal. All right. This, you guys see how bright green those are now? They pick one up. Ooh, they're hot. See that? Ooh. All right, I gotta put it down. It was a little hot. So they're bright, and let me grab one. I'll show you the texture that I'm looking at. I love fresh green beans. You know, I love canned green beans too. But really, see how it's snapped pretty easy, but there's still some crunch in there, but it's cooked all the way through. It's exactly what we're looking for. So now the heat's gonna go back on. Again, we're looking like medium high here. Now I'm gonna add this garlic. So the garlic's gonna go in. I am going to put my onions back in the pan. Onions are gonna go back in. We're gonna bring this up to heat. We're gonna get that garlic soft. That garlic is gonna get soft. Those onions are gonna heat back up. And then at the very end, we're gonna add those slivered almonds. Oh, it smells good. And again, this is just something a little different than your traditional green bean casserole. I mean, I love green bean casserole. It's great, but sometimes you want something a little different. Or who knows, maybe this year you want all traditional dishes and something that reminds you of normal. I understand that too. So on Thanksgiving Day, if I was doing this menu, what I would do is I would save the green beans for very last, and I would do that as the turkey was resting. So one of the biggest things, somebody asked earlier about how to keep your turkey breast juicy. So one big thing is that before you slice it, you need to let it rest. It needs to hang out, it needs to chill, it needs to cool down a little. Because if you try to slice it right when it comes out of the oven, the juices are gonna flow everywhere because it's still so hot. So if you let it just sit, you know, it's gonna depend on the size of your breast, but if you let it sit 15, 20, I even plan a lot of the times for 30 to 45 minutes, it's still gonna stay hot. That's a big piece of meat. It's gonna stay hot, but it's gonna be so much easier to slice. And it's going to be way juicier because what happens is the meat, the proteins start to reabsorb all of the juice that's in the turkey, all of that moisture content. And that's a great way to keep your turkey breast juicy. And really too, everything doesn't have to be done at the exact same time. Like I said, the sweet potatoes, if they get done before the other stuff, just put them aside, stick them right back in the oven right before you eat, heat them back up. Same with the green beans. They can sit for a while and still stay hot. And this is looking pretty good. What did I do with my spoon? There it is. All right. And really, a lot of times when I cook, a lot of it's by smell. So I know that my garlic is at a good place and not too dark when I start to smell it and it gets really fragrant. But I know it's not quite raw anymore and it's going to be soft, but we're about to the point where it is done. I'm just stirring this around. And I turned the heat off. Right, so this is what it looks like now. You see that? Okay, and now the green beans are still hot, everything's still warm. We're just gonna add these almonds. And I'll stir a few in. We'll put some more on top too. And I like the almonds, they just give a nice crunch. They have a good flavor. If you are allergic to nuts or just don't like almonds, again, leave them out and then you just have some nice sauteed green beans with onions. If you don't like onions, leave them out. Then you have some nice green beans with garlic and almonds. So I've got those stirred in. And again, it's done at this point. I just wanted to stir some almonds in and then we're just gonna add some more on top. You know, a lot of times at my house, what we do is just serve things out of the pan. If it's Thanksgiving and you're doing a big meal, you can absolutely put it in a serving dish. This is what it looks like with the almonds and everything all finished. All right. So our green beans are done. Our sweet potato stacks are in the oven. Our turkey is in the oven. Take a look at those. Those aren't quite done yet. Now I want to talk about slicing turkey. Now through the magic of television, I happen to have a turkey breast that's already done and ready to slice. So I'm going to get out this big guy here. I'm going to talk about slicing a turkey breast. We're going to slice some, and then we're going to plate up a whole plate and show you what it looks like. All right, so this is what the turkey breast looks like when it's all finished. You guys see that? It's got that nice brown crust on it, and it's manageable. You know, it's not this big hunkin' turkey that you have to figure out how to cut. This is so much easier to cut than a whole big turkey too. So when I cut a turkey, I always have like a moist towel next to me. That turkey skin is kind of slippery and kind of greasy. So I like to make sure I have something I can clean my hands off with. So the turkey has a bone in the middle. There's a bone underneath here. And then everything in between is your turkey breast. So I'm going to come around the side here. And we're just going to start slicing. And I like to slice it right on the breast. Try to keep some of that skin on. Ooh. All right, you guys see that? That's all the breast right there. And we're going to slice it. And then you just keep going. See, and it gets a little shreddy sometimes. That's okay. But again, this is why it's really important to rest that turkey breast, because I've had this turkey breast resting for, again, probably about 45 minutes at this point. And I like to keep the skin on when I make the slices because that skin tastes really good. There you go. And then you just keep slicing as you go. Now, when you get down to the middle, you can, if you want to, make a slice this way and then cut just the top. And it'll fall right off. Did you guys see how I sliced into there and then down? And your knives really matter for when you're cutting turkey. A dull knife can almost be, actually it is a lot of the times, a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife. Because if you have a dull knife and you're trying to slice this turkey, you're gonna use a lot more pressure and really get into there. And when you really put some force into it like that, and you're trying to just hack at it, one, you're gonna destroy your turkey because it's just gonna fall apart. You're not slicing it, you're just mushing it. 2, that is when a lot of injuries happen, when you're really trying to force a knife, because this turkey is not very stable. And if you're trying to add pressure here and hold it here, that's where you get injuries to your palm from cutting. That's where you get injuries to the back of your wrist from cutting. It can be pretty gnarly. So I really recommend, if you're gonna make a whole turkey breast like this, to have a good sharp knife. And then you just simply repeat the process on the next side. So you can see that turkey breast there, and then you just repeat it on that side. And there will still be plenty of meat left on the bone, and that's when you can use that leftover turkey meat left on the bone for turkey noodle soup. You can just pull it apart with your fingers after it's cold. Anything that you would use cooked chicken for, you can use cooked turkey for. You know, like I said, chicken noodle soup. You can do any kind of thing. Turkey salad, if you want to make a nice turkey salad instead of a chicken salad. And then I love too that with this turkey breast, like I showed you, you still get the wishbone. So you don't have to skip out on the wishbone, even if you get a turkey breast. Right, I'm gonna put this aside, and let's plate one up and see what we're looking at. Excuse me. All right, let's get a plate out here. And my tongs. And to everybody, if I was making this meal for my family on Thanksgiving and I had 4, 5, 6 people, what I would do to round this out, I would go to the store, I'd buy some dinner rolls, put out some butter and some honey, awesome, put out some jam. I might make mashed potatoes, and honestly, if I was making from scratch the rest of this stuff, I also might just buy a tub of Bob Evans mashed potatoes and put that in a bowl and warm it up. Nobody would know. It is fine to use store-bought stuff. If you like it and you've made some components that are homemade and you round out the rest of the meal with stuff that you bought from the store, nobody's gonna know. It's still gonna be a great time with your friends and family. So let's get our green beans on the plate. Some green beans. Making sure that I'm getting some of those good onions down in there too. I also like this meal in these Thanksgiving sides because they're colorful. Because a lot of times you'll get a plate on Thanksgiving and everything will be beige colored and bland. Not bland, I shouldn't say that, but everything will be kind of just the same color and the same texture. So I like this because it's a little bit more exciting. So I actually don't have the potato stacks that I put into the muffin tins earlier aren't quite done yet. They need another like 10 minutes. I will show you what they look like when they're finished. And again, nothing super fancy here. Oop, one fell out on me, sorry guys. When they come out of the muffin tin, that's what they look like. You guys see that? And all I did was scoop those out of the muffin tin when they were done. It's starting to get brown right there on the edge, a little bit crispy, and it's got that honey in there, so it's got a little glaze. So like I said, I think 2 per person, you know, maybe even 3. We can call it 3. I just like it. It adds some height to the plate, which I like. I apologize, guys, if you can hear my dogs barking upstairs. I don't know if you can or not. They're going on about something. And then we're just gonna get our turkey. I didn't make any gravy for this meal. You know, I know gravy is a Thanksgiving staple. Really, it's a pretty good looking plate. And just because I'm picky, this is a chef thing. Before we send a plate out, we always wipe the rim off, just so it looks clean. All right, there we go. We've got our green beans almondine, our roast turkey breast, and those cute little sweet potato stacks. It's nice, it's colorful. It's a little bit different than your traditional Thanksgiving, but it still has all the same elements, just a little updated, a little bit more fresh, not so beige. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions about Thanksgiving in general, even if it's not something that we cooked tonight? Perfect. Hey, Megan, our producer, is putting my email and her email in the chat box now. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If you get a couple weeks out from now and are planning your own Thanksgiving meal, please feel free to email me a question. If you're at the store and aren't sure what to buy, shoot me an email. I'll try to get with you as quick as I can. So yeah, anything coming in? Yeah, absolutely. It was super fun hanging out with everybody tonight.
Perfect. Well,
awesome.
Thank you, Sam and Megan. That was super fun and it looks delicious. I just wanted to let everyone know that we are having an Alpha Phi Eats event every month through the rest of the school year. So more information about those can be found on alphaphi.org. But otherwise, thank you for joining tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us, everybody. It was super fun. I hope you have a happy holiday season.